And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 7 seasons. Let's make it 8 in 2021. But enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FB Show, we're going to kick off our first episode of our offseason content, and that is going to be ranking all of the 2021 head coaching vacancies across the NFL. So if you're excited for this video, be sure to hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield. You can also smash the subscribe button like a power running back up the middle so you don't miss a video from me. And last but not least, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. But unfortunately, I think we need to start with the obvious here. We're zoomed in a bit tighter than normal, and you may notice that something is missing from my background. Yes, I took a week off. I needed to heal. I needed to recover. I suffered a championship defeat at the hands of my brother in week 17. It was a tough one. I went to war with the fantasy gods. That may have to be a video in and of itself. Long story short, I entered the 2-week playoff. I entered week 17 down by 28. I had Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill combined for 63 in week 17. And it wasn't enough going up against a 4-touchdown throwing Aaron Rodgers, going up against David Montgomery, A.J. Brown, 60-yard bomb at the end of the game for Tennessee against Houston, David Johnson, touchdown, and then just 50-yard plays on one drive. Just whatever could go wrong did. I cut it to 6 at one point. I was projected to win, but unfortunately I was not able to pull off the comeback, so congrats to my brother, unfortunately, for beating me. But don't worry, I got some plans for what I want to do over here. And also, at some point, we're going to rework the entire studio in and of itself this offseason too. So I'm really excited about that. But anyway, back to the content you guys are actually here for. I feel like I need to clarify, why we look a little bit different here. But let's dive right in. We're going to be ranking the head coaching vacancies for the 2021 offseason. There are 6 teams that have openings. It is the Jags, the Jets, the Lions, the Chargers, the Falcons, and the Texans. All of these jobs are interesting for their own ways, but for one reason or another, there has to be some sort of priority into which one I would rather have above the rest. So that's what we're going to kind of go through and analyze here. What are the best situations for these new coaches to take over from? And we're going to go backwards. So this is going to be kind of like a top 6 list. You guys get the idea though, right? So let's go right on ahead. And we're going to kick off with number 6. My number 6 of these openings is going to be the Houston Texans. So we need to start off with the obvious here. A pissed off Deshaun Watson. So the McNairs went against their advisors of who their GM hire should be, as well as probably their head coach at some point along the same lines. And they instead hired the player personnel for the Patriots. Now, let's be honest, right? I believe his name is Nick Cassero. He's from the Patriots. That's just one of those things where you understand the regime that you're pulling from, right? The Patriots, historic franchise, and why would you not want to bring him in? Apparently, they were rumored to be heavily pursuing him a few years ago, and they finally get their guy a bit later. Unfortunately, this comes at the cost of a pissed off Deshaun Watson, who felt like he did not have any say in the GM hire after McNair told him that he was going to. And on top of that, Deshaun really wanted the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, to be interviewed for the head coaching position, and the Texans wouldn't even do that. So now you have a pissed off Deshaun Watson, and ESPN's Chris Mortensen is currently reporting that while Watson has a no-trade clause, he may be open to the possibility of being traded to the Miami Dolphins in a package deal for Tua Tagovailoa, as well as some picks. So let's start there, right? The Houston Texans may not have a franchise quarterback going into this season, depending on how things shake out. Watson is tied under contract, but we do know one thing about the NFL, and that is you can trade any contract. And it's kind of the thing that we've learned about in sports over the course of the past few years. Any contract is tradable, right? You can look at the NBA, for example. Chris Paul's contract was traded. John Wall's contract was traded. Russell Westbrook's contract was traded. And it's kind of just come across sports as well, to where you just see guys moved. Calais Campbell had a massive contract, and he was traded for his 5th-round draft pick, right? Yannick Ngakoue also traded. Like, you are able to get guys if you're willing to spend, if you're willing to pull the trigger. So, looking at the Texans right now, they may not have a franchise quarterback, and I was running through this list with one of my friends, like, where do you rank Deshaun Watson in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL? And we both had him at number 3. We had Mahomes 1, Rodgers 2, and Watson 3. And the fact that you won't have a guy of Watson's caliber and what he did this season, throwing the team on his back, it's a thing that he's done his entire career. The fact that you may not have that during your first year as a head coach, not great. Also, you have a pissed off J.J. Watt, cornerstone player for this organization and for this defense. He's likely out of here this offseason as well. We all know the video that he we all know the press conference that he had, I believe it was in week 16, where he really just lit a fire under their defense and was talking about how much of a privilege it was for them to be playing on the national stage. On top of that, speaking of related, their defense is abysmal. It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Their secondary is utter garbage. Their run defense was piss poor. This was just an all-around terrible defense. Their defense is becoming increasingly competitive. The Colts made the playoffs this year. The Titans obviously won the division, and the Jags have a plethora of picks. We're going to be talking about them in just a moment. So the Jags are up and coming as well. So as this division is slowly becoming more and more competitive, the Texans are going the Texans are going the wrong way here, and so that needs to be stated. And last but not least, they have trash draft picks. They have no first, no second round pick for 2021, and they also don't have a second round pick for 2022. And I believe they have their first round pick in 2022. They didn't have their first or second round pick due to the Larry Tunsil trade, and then they also did not have their second round pick because of the Brandon Cooks trade, if my memory serves correctly. However, they did get a 4th round pick from the DeAndre Hopkins trade from Arizona, so yay, right? So basically, you're starting behind the 8 ball here with the Texans, just with a pissed off quarterback, pissed off defensive star. You have a terrible defense as is. Your offensive players are aging. David Johnson's 31. Brandon Cooks is about to be 28. Brandon Cooks is about to be 28 and has a bit of an injury history. So what does this team look like next year? It could get really ugly really fast, and that's why the Texans at number 6. Up next, number 5, I have the Atlanta Falcons. And admittedly, I don't know how great I feel about this one. I was kind of torn between 4 and 5 here, but I'm going to stick with them at 5. And the difference being is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is 35. He's owed $23 million in 2021. However, he does have a potential out in 2022. So that being said, Matt Ryan is a guy who could be traded this offseason, but understanding the kind of contract that these teams are going to be taking on with him and that salary is just something to consider. Again, any contract at this point is tradable, but what Matt Ryan looks like at age 36, owed that kind of money, does anybody really want to trade for that kind of contract, right? You look at Deshaun Watson and yes, you want to trade for that contract because Deshaun Watson's 25, 26, and has another 10 years ahead of him, right? Whereas Matt Ryan is on the back 9 of his career. So Matt Ryan being 35, that's an interesting spot to be in, right? You can kind of have 2 options to go with your draft capital because Atlanta has the number 4 pick, and that's something that's really interesting as well. And when I saw that, I was like, wait, what? Huh? That definitely threw me for a loop. And it is one of these things now where the Falcons have options. They can continue to ride Matt Ryan throughout the rest of his career. They can try and trade him at the end of this season, or not even trade him, just let him go because of that potential out after the year. And they can draft a quarterback with that number 4 overall draft pick. And this draft class, as many of you guys are aware, is increasingly becoming more and more loaded with quarterbacks, right? Between the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask. There are just so many guys here that teams could take, right? There are many options. And with Atlanta having the number 4 pick, from my understanding, they can have their pick of the litter that isn't Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence. So you're looking at a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, a Kyle Trask, a Mac Jones, right? They have options, and that's just something that's really interesting for them. Also, they have 10 picks in 2021. That's interesting. But the big kicker here is They are negative $24 million in cap space. They are negative. They have no cap room whatsoever. It's wild to believe that this team has that, because you kind of just like go through like some of their guys, right? Like Matt Ryan is owed a ton of money. And honestly, like I think that's the really interesting thing is if you get rid of Matt Ryan this offseason, your cap room then goes to zero effectively, right? Matt Ryan has $23 million owed in 2021. They are at minus $24 million. You do the little math there and you get to minus $1 million over the cap. So looking at that, that's a really interesting option for the Falcons. And they obviously had their draft picks, which when you have the 10 guys coming in, they're going to be on rookie salaries. And, you know, the NFL does have scaling salaries, so that's interesting. But regardless, the Atlanta Falcons could be in a very unique situation here between their aging veteran quarterback, who clearly still has it, as he showed this year, but they had the luxury of spending up on that first-round draft pick to grab a quarterback, and they have other assets in this draft as well. However, few kickers for them. Julio Jones, star wide receiver, aging out, had a really down year just due to injuries and really wasn't able to stay on the field. So Julio's aging out, and then also just their division is really brutal. It's winnable, but it's brutal. We know what the Buccaneers window currently is with Tom Brady. It looks like that Drew Brees is going to retire after this postseason from New Orleans. So the Saints are probably going to take a step back, but we know that they still have pieces on both sides of the ball to stay competitive. And then Carolina's up and coming as well. So just a really interesting situation for the Falcons, trying to figure out what they do. Do they try and go for it one more chance or a few more years with Matt Ryan? Or do they try and just hit the hard stop and get that reset going a bit earlier than I think a few people are expecting them to? And that's the luxury of having the number 4 pick and having a quarterback of the veteran caliber and status that Matt Ryan has. My number 4 head coaching vacancy is going to be the Detroit Lions. And this, honestly, the difference here, why I have the Lions at number 4 compared to the Falcons at number 5, is that Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is 3 years younger than Matt Ryan currently. He has an out at the end of this year. Matt Stafford's contract, he's done. Like he could be done in Detroit. He's owed $9.5 million in 2021 if he stays. 12.5 in 2022. Like this, remember, I just said Matt Ryan is owed $23 million. The contract that Matt Stafford is currently on is a bargain for any team, right? Matt Stafford has been a cornerstone piece of this Detroit Lions team since he entered the league, since he was drafted by Detroit number 1 overall. And I'm a Matt Stafford truther. I think Matt Stafford is great. I don't think that the Lions have done anything of note to put a great team around him, and that's been the thing that's been holding him back. But understanding where Matt Stafford is still in his career, this was a guy that just last year was on pace to throw for 5,000 yards. This was an offense that was moving at the end of the year. They have pieces, they're exciting, and I think that they could contend in just a few more years. They just have to nail the little things, and that's been the thing that I think has been holding the Lions back for quite a bit. Other causes of concern here is there's potentially no wide receiver core. Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones are both unrestricted free agents. I fully expect them to bring back Kenny Golladay. I don't know why they wouldn't. And Marvin Jones, if they can get him back on a cheap deal, would be lovely to have as that number 2. He's done great in that role over the course of his career in Detroit so far. But they also have a few young players as well, which I think is really interesting. Between a DeAndre Swift, running back, who excelled this season once he was finally given the opportunity. When you have a TJ Hawkinson, who's this up-and-coming, young, great tight end who had a phenomenal year. Quintez Cephas, rookie wide receiver out of Wisconsin, who I've been up and down banging the drum about. Jeff Okudah, who had an injury-plagued rookie season, right? They have guys that are starting to build, and they're starting to put those cornerstones in place for a team that can contend over the course of the next several seasons. However, the things holding them back, the main thing here, honestly, is the defense. We saw this defense get absolutely fucking shredded in both facets of the game, whether it was trying to stop the run or trying to stop the pass. There was bloodshed every single week for the Detroit Lions defense. We just saw in Week 17, Kirk Cousins threw for 270 yards in the first half, 4 total touchdowns. Alexander Mattison ran all over them. This was the theme throughout the course of the Lions games this season. They couldn't stop anybody, right? It's what we said all year long, right? You start your players against the Lions, and it worked out wonderfully for us as fantasy managers, but not so much for the Lions themselves. Now, they have 5 picks in 2021, including the number 7 overall pick. But unlike the Falcons, they have $40 million in cap space. And $40 million is not a lot compared to the Jags' $82 million, what we're going to talk about in just a moment. But that's still enough to bring in a piece or two, depending on the deal that you're going to get for them. This is a tough division, also winnable, kind of in that same boat as Atlanta. Just looking at what the Vikings could do once they get their defense settled. They obviously have the offensive pieces to make a run. Green Bay is just unstoppable currently, and it doesn't look like that Aaron Rodgers is slowing down anytime soon. And we'll see what happens with the Bears this offseason with their quarterback situation, because that's clearly the one thing holding them back, and maybe they need another offensive piece as well. So that's why the Lions at number 4, and it really was just the nuances, looking at the cap space, looking at the age difference between Stafford and Matt Ryan, looking at the contract differences, and then just some of the other pieces as well. I think I like the Lions situation just a little bit more than Atlanta's. Number 3, I have the New York Jets. And this one's really interesting, right? The Jets could be really fascinating. They have the number 2 overall pick, which does suck because they were in line to get Trevor Lawrence all year long until they won back-to-back games at the end of the year, just because, Jets. To me, they have competent pieces on both sides of the ball. I've been a big proponent of the Jets all year. C.J. Mosley opted out just due to COVID concerns this season. Quentin Williams, the second-year player out of Alabama, I believe, came on really strong this year. Unfortunately, he went down with an injury. Mekhi Becton, just a monster offensive lineman, showed flashes as well. Denzel Mims played great in his time on the field. He started off really slow due to that hamstring injury that kept him out for the early parts of the year. But once he came on, he quickly became one of the team's leading receivers. They have great wide receiver. They have a great hyperbolic. But between Rashad Perriman, Jamison Crowder, and Denzel Mims, you kind of see this offense and where it's supposed to go. Chris Herndon finally came out of nowhere, right? About time. Adam Gase is gone, so maybe Chris Herndon's stock goes back up through the roof this offseason. We'll see what happens there. They have 2 first-round picks this year, 2 next year, $68 million in cap space. And I'm really intrigued by the Jets right now, and I don't know why. I really don't, because I understand they're the Jets, right? And they haven't done anything to make me intrigued. But understanding what they could do with their draft capital, right? They could grab a Travis Etienne out of Clemson for the running back. If they wanted to go Najee Harris, a big bruiser, they can. If they want to try and model their game after Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Running back's definitely one of their needs. Sean May even on defense had an outstanding season. That was another player who I forgot in my competent pieces on both sides of the ball list. I like the direction that the Jets are going. And if they can nail this coach and they can nail these 2 draft classes, I think they could be in a really good position. The biggest drawback from the Jets is understanding, very similarly to the Texans, that you're playing from behind right now, right? New England is down. They're not going to stay down for long. At least that's not what the expectation is going to be. But then you also look at what the Dolphins are doing. You look at what the Bills are doing, and both those teams are going to the fucking moon right now. The Bills are one of the best teams in football. Dominantly displayed that all season long. The Dolphins, we'll see what happens with their quarterback situation. I think that's going to be really interesting, and it's going to dictate the way that they move, I think, over the course of the next 2 seasons. But understanding that the Jets have this window to play catch up, and this window is 2 years. If they don't catch up by the end of 2022, they are dead in the water. I think they're going to be in an even worse spot than they are now, because the Bills are showing no signs of slowing down, and the Dolphins are just taking off like a fucking rocket ship, trying to compete with Buffalo to win the AFC East year over year. Up next, number 2 on the list is the Jacksonville Jaguars. We need to start here. This team is so goddamn young. It's almost unbelievable. I want to say they're one of, if not the youngest teams in the league, but I'm just going to read you off some names here, all right? DJ Chark, James Robinson, Laviska Shenault, Miles Jack, Josh Allen, the defensive end, Josh Allen, and Chris Henderson, CJ Henderson. The average age of those players is 23 or 24. And even then, all of those guys outside of Myles Jack is a second-year rookie or a third-year player. Like, this team is so goddamn young, and they have the pieces to continue to improve. Oh, they also have 10 picks in this draft, including the number 1 overall pick. So welcome to your new home, Trevor Lawrence. $81 million in cap space. Like, what more could you want if you were a head coach coming in? I only have them at number 2. Because there is one thing that I would actually rather have if I was an incoming head coach. But just looking at the situation that Jacksonville has, if you are an incoming head coach, you have the ability to come in with this already young, pre-existing team, and we're going to give you 10 shots to pick your guys to build around. That is a dream. Sorry. And we're also going to give you an ungodly amount of Brinks truck money for salary cap. Sure, sounds like a dream to me. So that's why I like the Jags as number 2. But ultimately here, my number 1 head coaching vacancy in 2021 is the Los Angeles Chargers. And honestly, I don't know how this is even a discussion here. Bar none, this is the best offense available among all of the open coaching jobs here. Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Justin Jackson, Josh Kelly, Kalen Ballage. I mean, Jalen Guyton. Like, they were just pulling guys off, and it didn't matter. Like, what the Chargers did this season, among their slew of injuries, and what Justin Herbert did as a rookie, just coming in and lighting the NFL on fire, was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, right? Among the draft community and just among the NFL circles kind of in general, Justin Herbert was a guy who a whole lot of people were high on. Just there really was no true development over the course of his college career. It was one of the things that was just really jarring to see. But what he did on a week-in, week-out basis this season, the way that he elevated this offense, the way he was gunslinging for 300 yards, multiple games with 3+ passing touchdowns. Yes, it did kind of fall off at the end, but what you saw from Herbert was the epitome of an NFL franchise quarterback. And he was making everybody look good, right? So this easily, without a doubt, the best offense available for any head coach entering the NFL here. Their defense was brutal, but they were also hurt all year long. Like, I'm just going to read you off some names here. Their 4 key defensive players were all hurt. Chris Harris Jr. was hurt. Edgerrin James, Joey Bosa, and Melvin Ingram. Like, they literally did not have their core 4 defensive pieces at point or all of the year. So their defense is going to take a step forward. They'll be back to where they probably were at the end of 2019. And then also, they have 8 draft picks, $29 million in cap space. If they want to spend it on their defense, which is where I would put that draft capital at, as well as probably some of the salary cap, I think I would, right? They signed Austin Eckler last offseason to a cheap deal. You have Justin Herbert under a rookie contract. Keenan Allen signed, I believe, last year or 2 offseasons ago. Mike Williams is coming up on an extension, I believe, and then Hunter Henry might be as well. But I think that they all should be in line to keep this core intact going forward. I don't expect it to cost them too much. Just looking at some of the performances and, how Hunter Henry and Mike Williams have played, I don't think that they've really deserved big contracts. But this team is really just built already for you. They had 7 losses. 7 of their 9 losses came by 7 points or less. So you're looking at 1 possession games, and that's usually a stat that evens itself out year over year. So you are getting a team that is already built for you. You have 8 picks to do whatever you want in this draft. You have $30 million in salary cap space, and everything's just set for you. The only issue here for me is that you're in the same division as the Chiefs. And with that being said, the expectation is that you aren't going to win that division. It's the Chiefs to lose. So you're competing for wildcard spots almost every single year, unless you're, for whatever reason, able to dethrone Kansas City. But, that's fine, right? Because you can always make that run into the postseason through the wild card spots, and with some of the playoff expansion that's been rumored to kind of stay intact going forward, the Chargers should be in line to make the playoffs pretty consistently during the course of the next 5 years or so. And that's why I have the Chargers number 1. They just have everything already built for them. You're ready to roll out the gate, and it's just honestly a matter of you winning close games that they probably should have this season. You're going to get another year 2 of Justin Herbert. The offense stays the same. Your defense is going to be back and healthy, and however else you retool it besides that is kind of up to you. And that's why the Chargers are my #1 head coaching vacancy for the 2021 NFL season. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button down below. You can also smash that subscribe button like a power running back up the middle so you never miss a video from me. Follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. The offseason content is going to be rolling at a pretty steady pace. And then also, last but not least, I think we're going to go daily throughout the majority of the offseason. I love it. I love the idea of it. I want to crank out as much off-season content as possible. And it was just one of those things where, you know what, I kind of just looked at the situation, and I got my week off this week. I enjoyed it. I watched too much Netflix, but we're back. We're ready to go. And honestly, I'm a bit pissed off. I'm a bit pissed off that I lost my title. I'm a bit pissed off that I lost the ability to be the first person in my league of record to. I became the first person in my league of record to. No, what am I even trying to say here? I had the ability to be. I had the ability to be the first person in my league of record to win back-to-back championships, and that did not happen. So I'm pissed off. I'm ready to go. I might hang a sign here that just says like 28, and that was the amount that I lost. I lost by 20, but I lost by 28 in week 1 of my championship, and that was the thing that really dug me in. So we might have some motivation here on the back wall. Who knows? Anyway, I'm pissed off. I'm ready to roll, and we're going to go daily because we're going to win another fantasy championship in 2021 to make up for the loss in 2020. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.